My name is Victoria, and I'm in my 30s working at a company. I married my husband, Tom, about 2 years ago. We didn't have our wedding at my request, but I was perfectly happy because I never thought I'd get married. Recently, my older sister, Rachel, contacted me to say she's having her wedding.
You didn't even have your wedding, did you? Poor thing. I'm going to have a big one.
When Rachel told me that, I was genuinely happy for her. The next day, my parents called me to come over to their house.
Don't come to Rachel's wedding.
She asked us to keep it a secret. Sorry.
I didn't understand what they meant. But yesterday, Rachel contacted me and told me she was having her wedding. Even after hearing my words, my parents didn't change their expressions and said,
She must have been really happy. She just had to tell you.
But she didn't say she was inviting you, right? You're too plain, and she doesn't want you there. Rachel likes flashy and beautiful things. You get it, don't you?
It's true that Rachel and I have opposite personalities. Unlike me, who is plain and avoids standing out, Rachel loves attention. And even in her 30s, she prefers flashy clothes and looks beautiful even to her younger sister. She doesn't seem to like me very much, and ever since we were kids, she's had a competitive spirit towards me, often taking things away from me. When she stole my boyfriend, I finally complained, but Rachel just smirked and said,
Well, I fell in love with him, so it can't be helped. And your boyfriend likes me better.
From that moment, I knew I could never get along with Rachel, and I've tried to keep my distance. At first, she would constantly brag to me, but recently we hadn't had much contact, so I thought she had finally gotten bored. But when she brought up her wedding, I thought she just wanted to show off. Don't come to the wedding. What does that even mean? Rachel's words felt so off that I decided to secretly peek in on her wedding day without telling my parents. And then I saw Rachel sitting as the bride, with Tom next to her as the groom. Of course, my parents were sitting in the family section. They must have recognized Tom as my husband, yet they looked happily at the couple. On top of that, my parents were holding a small boy I didn't know. While I was peeking, I saw two women walking towards the door where I was hiding. I quickly moved away from the door and quietly followed the two women as they came out. The two women headed to the restroom, so I waited a bit to avoid suspicion and then went in after them, hiding in a stall. The two women came out of the stalls and started chatting, probably while touching up their makeup. Tom just got divorced recently, and now he's already having another wedding? That's pretty shameless, don't you think?
And get this, the new bride is apparently his ex-wife's sister.
Seriously. Wow, that's a major turnoff. They were probably Tom's coworkers. It seemed Tom was spreading the word that he had divorced me.
He said he married his ex-wife for her money. Now that he's been promoted and doesn't need her anymore, he dumped her.
Wow, how can he go around bragging about something so awful?
He probably thinks it's some kind of heroic tale. Plus, his new wife is much flashier and prettier than the last one, so he wants to show her off.
Men's vanity is the worst. But isn't it weird that there are no bosses at the wedding? Just coworkers?
Yeah, right. Maybe there's something he doesn't want them to find out.
The two women left the restroom, laughing. I stepped out of the stall and looked at myself in the mirror. Actually, I had prepared myself for today's wedding in a certain way. Before getting married, when Tom approached me, I was puzzled as to why he chose me. Tom, are you sure you want to be with me? I'm sure there are better women for you out there.
Victoria, I want you. No, it has to be you. You don't need to put yourself down like that. Please be with me.
Tom encouraged me like that many times. That's why I decided to marry him. I told him about Rachel openly.
I told you, Victoria, you're the only one for me. Don't worry.
But I trusted Tom when he said that with a smile. However, this is the result. Tom changed so much after we got married that he seemed like a different person. He stopped doing any housework, and although he used to let me know when he was working late, after we got married, He sometimes didn't contact me and stayed out all night. Hey, could you at least let me know if you're going to be home late?
It's not my fault. It's overtime. Unlike you, I'm being worked to the bone on a low salary. You have it easy. You make more money than I do without doing much.
Even when I asked nicely, Tom would make snide remarks and brush me off. Yet, when he wanted something, he'd cozy up to me.
Hey, I really want this, but my salary isn't enough. You're better than me and make more money, right? Could you lend me some?
I knew I was being used by Tom, and today it was confirmed. Well, now I have no regrets. Any lingering feelings I had for Tom are gone, and it's time for some serious revenge. I went to Rachel and Tom's reception hall and spoke to one of the staff. I'm scheduled to give a speech as a friend of the couple today. It was supposed to be a surprise. Is it almost time? Smiling, I said this, and the staff confirmed through an earpiece.
Yes, everything will be ready shortly. Please wait a moment.
I waited as instructed.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a surprise for you. A close friend of both the bride and groom has prepared a special speech. Please welcome them.
As this announcement was made, the doors to the hall opened. I walked in confidently under the spotlight. Standing in front of the microphone, I turned to face the bride and groom. Rachel and Tom were frowning, unable to recognize me even though they were looking right at me. I began to speak clearly into the microphone so everyone could hear. Thank you for the introduction. I'm a friend of the bride and groom. But actually, I'm not a friend. I'm the bride's sister and the groom's wife, Victoria. My voice echoed through the silent reception hall. Rachel and Tom, upon hearing my name, finally realized who I was and stared at me wide-eyed. It was understandable. For today's event, I had hired professional hair and makeup artists and a stylist, transforming myself into someone almost unrecognizable. I spared no expense on my outfit and makeup, opting for the most luxurious choices, and hired the best professionals. Even I was astonished by my transformation. For Rachel and Tom, who always looked down on me as plain, my dramatic change must have been shocking. I apologize to everyone attending today for my unexpected presence. I should have been sitting in the family section, but both Rachel and my parents repeatedly told me not to come to this wedding. The room started to buzz with murmurs. I believe everyone here thinks that Tom and I are already divorced. Some of you might even think I'm a stalker for showing up here, but that's not the case. The truth is, Tom and I are still married. In fact, there hasn't been any talk of our divorce at all. Tom and I are still legally married. If you don't believe me, I'll show you our marriage certificate or whatever proof you need. I smiled warmly at the guests, and the murmuring grew louder.
Hey, don't ruin my wedding.
Yeah, I understand your feelings, but today is Rachel's special day. Can't you just let it go for today?
Rachel snapped back at me, and my mom tried to calm me down. I listened and then deliberately put on a sorrowful expression. Mom is right. Today is Rachel's big day. I wanted to be here to celebrate her. When Rachel and our parents told me not to come, I was really heartbroken. I took out a handkerchief and pretended to wipe away my tears, and the atmosphere in the hall shifted to one of sympathy for me, while Rachel looked visibly annoyed. Since we were young, Rachel always seemed to dislike me. I only had hand-me-downs from Rachel. Even when I finally got something new for my birthday, I was told to give it to Rachel. Still, I loved Rachel, and I thought making her happy by giving up my things was the right thing to do. When she stole my boyfriend, I complained, but I told myself it was understandable because Rachel was so beautiful. Our parents also said it was only natural. As I revealed Rachel's and my parents' actions, the guests' attention turned to them. My dad avoided eye contact, and my mom looked around nervously. Rachel glared at me and yelled,
Stop bringing up the past. This is why I hate ugly and plain girls like you. You're so spiteful.
Oh, if you don't want to talk about the past, let's talk about the present. You and our parents excluded me from this wedding with Tom, even though we're still married. And since you hate plain and ugly girls, I went all out to dress up for you. Didn't you like it? Rachel was at a loss for words. Looking around at the guests, half of them had expressions of disbelief or confusion, while the other half were trying to suppress laughter. The confused ones were probably those who had been told beforehand that Tom and I were divorced, and the ones amused were those who had some inkling of the situation. I had obtained the seating chart in advance, so considering the relationships between the guests and the bride and groom, I didn't think anyone would stop my speech. As I expected, the only ones trying to stop me were Rachel and my parents. Interestingly, Tom, the other party involved, was still in a state of shock. Well, as I mentioned earlier, Rachel and my parents' behavior is nothing new. But I never expected my own husband, Tom, to be so outrageous. When I shifted the focus to Tom, he flinched.
Victoria, it's not what you think. This is.
In this situation, how can you say that? What's so different about it? I shot a sharp glance at Tom, and he started to stammer.
No, it's just. Rachel begged me. She's still single, you know? She said, I can't stand Victoria getting married before me. Please have a wedding with me. So I thought just a wedding would be okay. A ceremony doesn't require registration. I know it was wrong not to tell you, but I felt sorry for Rachel since she's your older sister.
Tom, with a strained smile, started to make excuses. So, once this wedding is over, you're saying you would cut ties with Rachel and continue our marriage? For some reason, Tom's face lit up at my question, misunderstanding it completely.
Yes, Rachel and I are just for today. After today, everything goes back to normal.
And you're saying you love me?
Of course, I told you, you're the only one for me.
Hearing Tom's words, I couldn't help but break into a big smile. But it wasn't because I was happy with his words.
What are you talking about? Just one day with me. After this grand wedding, there's no way. Victoria, too bad for you. Your precious husband is crazy about me.
Hey,
Tom tried to stop Rachel, but she snapped at him too.
What? It's true. Right after marrying Victoria, you started having an affair with me. You're always saying, I only married that plain girl for her money, while Rachel is the one I truly love.
Ignoring Tom's frantic attempts to intervene, Rachel continued to yell. Then she turned to me with a triumphant smile.
Plus, I have something you could never have, a child with Tom. Mom and Dad are thrilled to have a grandchild. Too bad for you. You have no place here, so why don't you just leave?
Rachel glanced at the child in our parents' arms, declaring her victory. I couldn't help but laugh. Rachel, not understanding why I was laughing, began to get even more agitated.
What is wrong with you? Stop laughing like a freak and get out.
Rachel yelled at me, and I forced myself to stop laughing. Oh, that was hilarious. Sorry, I just couldn't help it. I never thought it would go this perfectly. I pulled an IC recorder out of my bag. Thank you for confessing your affair. You've saved me the trouble of gathering evidence. I deliberately made Tom say, I loved you because I knew that would push Rachel to start talking. I never imagined she would confess so perfectly.
That evidence is invalid. I can just say you threatened me into saying it.
Rachel tried to make a weak excuse. Oh, I have plenty of other evidence of your affair. This is just the icing on the cake, I calmly informed Rachel. When Rachel and my parents told me not to come to the wedding, I already suspected something between her and Tom. Rachel's behavior, always trying to outshine me, made it odd for her not to invite me to the wedding. It was easy to imagine her trying to steal Tom to feel superior. The private investigator I hired quickly gathered evidence of Tom and Rachel's affair. I had known about the wedding, but until today, a part of me still wanted to trust Tom. However, seeing him sitting proudly in the groom's seat destroyed any lingering affection or trust I had, and I was ready for my counterattack. Rachel, get ready to pay the alimony for your affair. By the way, if you have a hidden child, the alimony amount increases. So be prepared. Rachel started yelling again.
No way. Why should I pay you?
Ignoring Rachel's complaints, I moved on to the next part. Now it's time for the next surprise. Since I came here as a surprise guest, I have another surprise prepared. Here they are. As I called out loudly, the main doors opened and 5 women entered the hall. The 5 women, all in their 20s, varied in appearance. Some had long hair, some short, some were cute, and some had a strong, beautiful look. At first glance, they didn't seem to have much in common, but I didn't miss Tom's sudden change in expression when he recognized them. So, can anyone guess who these women are? There was no response from the room. Only Tom's eyes were darting around nervously. Even Rachel, who had been yelling earlier, furrowed her brows in suspicion. Tom, you know all of them, don't you? I said with a cheerful smile, and Tom visibly tensed. The answer is, they are all Tom's girlfriends.
What?
Rachel was the first to react to my words. Clearly, she hadn't known. When I hired a private investigator to look into Tom and Rachel, I was shocked to find out there were 5 other women involved. It's bad enough that he was cheating with Rachel, but finding out there were 5 more really surprised me too. By the way, some of them were misled into thinking he was single, and others knew it was an affair but were promised marriage. Each one of them was told, "You're the only one for me. I love you." All 5 women looked at Tom with teary or angry eyes. Tom's face contorted in fear.
What is going on here?
Rachel screamed hysterically, blaming Tom. The 5 women also surrounded Tom, closing in on him.
Get out of here. This is my and Tom's wedding. You were just flings.
You're just a mistress too, since you're not legally married.
Rachel and one of the mistresses were yelling at each other, while the other 4 women crowded around Tom. Tom tried to placate everyone with a strained smile, looking terrified. I watched the 7 of them for a while, curious to see what would happen next.
You only received words of love. Unlike you, I have the ultimate proof of love, a child with Tom. I did what even his wife, Victoria, couldn't do. That makes me different from all of you.
Rachel looked triumphantly at the rest of us, while the 5 women grimaced in frustration. I remained calm. By the way, before Tom and I got married, we had a premarital checkup. Everyone turned to me with surprised faces as I began to speak.
What are you suddenly talking about?
Rachel snapped, but I continued. We both went for the checkup, but I went alone to hear the results because Tom said it was fine for me to handle it. We were both healthy, but there was one issue Tom didn't know about.
What?
Tom, taken aback, looked more shocked than I expected.
What do you mean? Why didn't you tell me right away? Am I sick?
Tom seemed to think he had a serious illness. I calmly corrected him. No, like I said, we're both healthy. But there was one issue with Tom's fertility test. Tom, you have azoospermia. The previously noisy hall fell completely silent at my words.
What? Azoospermia? Me? That's a lie, right? You're just saying that to get back at me because I was horrible to you.
Tom couldn't accept the truth, but I decided to make him face reality. Sure, I'm getting back at you, but unfortunately, this is true. I even brought the medical report with the test results. Do you want to see it for yourself? I threw the envelope containing the medical report towards the groom's seat. The envelope fell short of the groom's seat due to the distance, but Tom pushed past the women to pick it up. His hands were shaking as he pulled out the report.
It really says, I have azoospermia.
In disbelief, he kept reading the report over and over. It was my idea to have a premarital checkup. When I was about to marry Tom, I thought it would be unfair to him if there was something wrong with my body. If I'm infertile, Tom, you can leave me and have kids with someone else. I had confided in Tom before the checkup.
Kids or no kids, it doesn't matter to me. It's you I want to be with, Victoria. But knowing our health status is important, so I'll take the test with you.
We ended up getting the premarital checkup together. In hindsight, Tom probably wanted to show his kindness to me as part of his plan to get married. He never imagined that such a casual checkup would reveal his infertility. I hadn't told Tom about his infertility because I didn't think it was necessary. Tom had said kids were optional, so I thought there was no need to burden him with that painful truth. But now the situation had changed, and there was no reason for me to keep it a secret any longer.
Then whose child is that?
Tom's gaze turned to the child in my parents' arms, and everyone in the hall followed suit. The child, perhaps completely exhausted, was sound asleep despite all the noise. Both my dad and mom averted their eyes, as if trying to escape the scrutiny. Maybe they had also considered the possibility.
What are you implying? Are you saying I cheated? Of course, it's Tom's child. Victoria, you faked that report to trap me, didn't you?
I firmly denied Rachel's accusation. Forging a medical report is a crime. I wouldn't go that far. If you doubt it so much, why don't you and Tom go to the hospital? While you're at it, get a DNA test for the child. Rachel swallowed her words, seemingly struck by my suggestion. She must have some idea of the truth.
What do you mean? You said it was my child, so I acknowledged it.
Of course, it's your child. Victoria is lying.
Then let's do a DNA test.
How dare you doubt me? Apologize to the child.
Rachel and Tom started arguing, and the 5 women joined in. It was clear the reception was over. Seeing that, I silently left the venue. When I got home, I left a completed divorce form and a lawyer's business card in the living room, and then I left the house. Even though Tom had been coming home frequently, he never noticed that I had packed my things in advance. A few days later, I received a call from an unknown number.
Victoria, what do you think you're doing?
Rachel screamed at me. "You're loud. Can you calm down a bit?"
I can't calm down. You ruined my wedding. I was counting on Tom to support me, and you ruined my plans. Take responsibility.
Rachel continued to rant like a machine gun.
You insulted me in front of all those people, so I'm going to sue you for defamation. You better be ready.
That's fine with me. In return, I'll make sure to claim the alimony I haven't asked for yet, so you better be ready too. By the way, if you're going to sue for defamation, you'll need to hire a lawyer. Do you even have the money for that? I replied calmly, and Rachel was momentarily lost for her words. You were the one who acted unreasonably first. I'm just retaliating, and don't bother running to mom and dad for help. I've been financially supporting them, but I cut them off, so they don't have any money either. Since I started working, I had been financially supporting my parents. Part of me wanted to gain some recognition from them, who always prioritized Rachel. But after this incident, I was finally done. I'm no longer involved with any of you. Tell mom and dad that too. I told Rachel and hung up the phone. After that, I changed my phone number. No one knows where I live since I left the house I shared with Tom. I explained the situation to my company, and after a leave of absence, they arranged for me to transfer to a branch in a completely different area. Tom, Rachel, and my parents can only contact me through my lawyer. The divorce process with Tom took some time, but we finally divorced under the condition that I wouldn't demand alimony and wouldn't reveal the scandal to anyone. One day, my lawyer handed me a letter from Tom.
I never imagined you could become so beautiful, Victoria. I regret my foolish actions every day. I'm still devoted to you. I believe you must be lonely without me. Let's start over together.
The letter was full of things to criticize, but I ignored it to avoid the hassle of responding. If he becomes too persistent, I'll consider using the alimony as leverage or getting a restraining order. By the way, I haven't heard from Rachel, but my parents sent a letter through the lawyer as well.
We deeply regret not considering how much we hurt you. We made a huge mistake. Rachel left, abandoning her child. We have neither money nor help, and we don't know what to do. You must be lonely too. Why don't we start over as a family again?
Their letter was strangely similar to Tom's, which made me laugh. To them, I was always just a convenient person. I used to be hurt by them, but now that Tom and my parents have become insignificant to me, I don't feel anything anymore. I'm determined to look forward and do my best in my new life.
My name is Emily, and I'm 42 years old. Today, I'm out in the city shopping and taking a walk with my boyfriend. As we're walking to our destination store, laughing together, someone calls out from behind. I turn around, and there he is, my ex-husband Mike, whom I divorced 2 years ago. Mike.
Long time no see. Has it been since the divorce?
Mike approaches casually and looks me up and down. Then his gaze shifts to the man standing next to me.
Who's this?
Shouldn't he introduce himself first? Thinking this, I glare at Mike. Then, my boyfriend introduces himself.
I'm James Smith, Emily's boyfriend.
Nice to meet you. I'm Mike Anderson, Emily's ex-husband. Wow, what a polite young man you've got here.
Mike stared rudely at James as well. Then, suddenly, he turned back to me and burst out laughing.
How can you date such an old lady?
What?
Anyone who sees you two would wonder what your relationship is. You look so mismatched.
I felt my face burning with embarrassment. Sure, he's 9 years younger than me at 33. And here I am, in my 40s. Suddenly, I started worrying that people might see us that way.
Isn't that rude?
James replied to Mike in a calm voice.
Sorry if I offended you, but you know, a wife should always be young.
Sure, I'm younger than Emily. But there's something you don't know.
Mike looked puzzled.
Don't know what.
James replied with a cool demeanor. Mike clearly didn't like his calm expression.
Yeah, there's something you don't know, Mike.
What are you talking about? I'm happy. Look at my family.
Mike, without being asked, pulled out his phone from his pocket and showed us a picture. In it was the woman he had an affair with 2 years ago, the one who took my husband from me. She was sitting with a child on her lap, smiling happily.
Having a kid is a lot of work every day, but it's fulfilling. I never thought working for my kid would be so much fun.
I froze when I saw the picture. Memories I'd tried to forget came rushing back. 2 years ago, Mike suddenly brought a woman named Linda home and said,
She's pregnant. Sorry, but I need you to divorce me.
It was our wedding anniversary, and I had cooked all of Mike's favorite dishes. Next to him, the woman, Linda, was rubbing her belly and looking at me triumphantly. What What do you mean? Have you been cheating on me?
Wow, you never noticed? You're so dense.
Linda looked like she was still in her 20s. Where did you meet her?
What's it to you?
How old are you?
I'm 28.
28.
Surprised? She's way younger than you.
I can't believe this is happening.
I hate to add to your confusion, but can you sign the divorce papers right now?
Mike took out a paper from his bag and placed it in front of me. You can't expect me to just sign this on the spot.
I'll give you 3 days. Get it signed by then. I'll come back to pick it up in 3 days.
What am I supposed to do? This is outrageous. No matter how much I pleaded, Mike wouldn't listen. After saying everything they wanted, Mike and Linda left the house. All that was left was me and the divorce papers. I didn't want to think about anything anymore, so I decided to do as Mike said. And that's how we got divorced.
So, how have you been?
Mike's voice snapped me back to reality. James looked at me with concern as I stared at the picture Mike had shown me. What do you mean?
Your life now. I bet nothing much has changed since the divorce, right? Oh, but at least you've got a boyfriend now.
How can you say my last 2 years were a waste when I haven't even told you anything?
You were looking at my picture with such jealousy. Your face was pretty scary.
I just felt sick seeing the face of the woman you cheated with again.
Don't call her my mistress. She's my wife now.
Mike pouted in protest. Then he started bragging about his wonderful life.
Kids grow up so fast. It feels like just yesterday she was born, and now she's already calling me dad.
James and I listened silently as Mike tried to show off his happiness.
When I think about protecting this smile, it really motivates me at work. I even got a promotion after our divorce.
Mike looked down on me as if blaming me for not being able to have kids and hold him back from his promotion.
I'm living a successful life, but what about you? You're so boring and unremarkable. Our marriage was incredibly dull.
Dull?
Yeah, you took care of the house, but that's it. I never felt motivated to work hard because of you.
Mike crossed his arms and looked up as if reminiscing about the past. I didn't want James to hear this.
And while we didn't have kids, I became a father after remarrying. You never became a parent. There's a different vibe between people who have kids and those who don't. People with kids seem more grounded.
Are you saying I'm unreliable because I didn't have kids?
That's not what I meant, but you should be careful.
Mike suddenly turned to James, placing a hand on his shoulder.
Emily can't have kids. Even if you marry her, you won't have children.
What?
Hey,
You haven't told him, have you? James, don't rush into this. You're being deceived.
Mike spoke to him as if he were a child.
Emily can't have kids.
Mike smirked as he saw James mumble this. How could he bring up something as sensitive as infertility so lightly? He's the worst.
If you want a happy family like mine, don't marry her.
James stared intently at Mike. This is the worst. Having such an ex-husband is definitely a deal breaker. I was anxiously thinking to myself. Then James brushed Mike's hand off his shoulder and said,
Marrying a younger woman doesn't guarantee happiness, you know.
What? You're still saying that?
I'll keep saying it. Mike, I heard your wife left you and took the kid.
What? I couldn't help but gasp. I quickly looked at Mike, who was staring at James with his mouth open.
What are you talking about?
Judging by his panicked reaction, it seemed to be true.
You can't pretend you don't know. You were just bragging about your family earlier.
I showed you pictures of my wife and kid.
Yes, I saw. But when were those pictures taken? At least 3 months ago, right?
3 months?
Your wife left you 3 months ago, didn't she?
What? How do you know that?
I was completely confused. How did James know all this?
Actually, my family runs a store and Linda works for us.
What?
What?
Linda used to work for us but left when she got pregnant and married you.
I never imagined they were connected in such a way. It's a small town, so it's not surprising that such things happen.
But 3 months ago, Linda came back asking for her job. She said she found out her husband was cheating and they were getting divorced.
Cheating? Mike, you cheated again? You never learn.
Shut up. It's none of your business.
Mike scratched his head, looking embarrassed. I couldn't help but speak up.
Stop running your mouth.
When you showed the family picture, I was really surprised. There she was, our employee. I never imagined she was the one who had an affair with you and kicked Emily out.
James put his hand on my shoulder and glared at Mike. Mike stepped back a bit, like a frog stared down by a snake.
Kicked her out is an exaggeration.
Telling her to sign the divorce papers within 3 days is basically kicking her out.
You went around blabbing about that to others?
It's natural to talk about yourself to the person you're dating, especially the reason for the divorce.
Anyway, I couldn't believe Linda did something like that. She was well regarded by the other employees and took good care of her colleagues. Hearing that she had an affair and broke up a family was shocking.
I recalled her behavior from 2 years ago. She didn't strike me as a well-regarded woman, but she must have been professional at work.
She said she left because her husband was cheating and they were about to get divorced.
That's just what she's saying. I'm not getting divorced. I've been trying to convince her to stay.
But she seemed pretty determined.
I don't get why she's so mad. She cheated on her husband to marry me in the first place.
Mike looked up at the sky as if in exasperation, and I was overwhelmed by all this new information. Then Mike suddenly said,
Wait, if she worked at your store before, then your family.
Yes, my family owns a French pastry shop. My father is the current owner, but I'm set to take over in a few years.
James' family owns a French pastry shop that's been around for over 80 years. It's famous in the city.
I thought you seemed like a rich kid, and you really are one.
Mike once again rudely scrutinized James.
Being called a rich kid at 33 is embarrassing. I wish I looked more mature.
James blushed, and Mike spat out.
That's such a rich kid response.
Thank you.
I wasn't complimenting you.
James doesn't get sarcasm. James's calm demeanor seemed to annoy Mike even more.
I can't believe a catch like you is dating an old lady like you. Are you blackmailing him or something?
That's rude. I'm not blackmailing anyone.
Yeah, if anything, she's got my heart.
What?
Huh?
Was that not funny?
Maybe not the best timing. When I said that, James looked a bit dejected. I couldn't help but find this side of him adorable. He hates being called cute, though.
You two are such a lovey-dovey couple. So, how did you two meet? Emily never liked French pastries.
Hearing this made me sad. I do like them. In fact, I prefer them to American sweets.
Really? But you always brought home cream puffs or cakes or other American sweets.
That's because you used to say you preferred American sweets to French ones.
That's definitely true. But did I really say that?
You did. You even said you didn't like the texture of French pastries, so I always bought cakes and stuff.
I didn't know.
So after we divorced, I decided to indulge myself without any reservations. Around that time, there was a French pastry fair at the department store. That's when I first went to James's shop.
I remember you at the time, Emily. You had this sparkle in your eyes while picking out sweets. In the end, you couldn't choose and bought every type of macaron.
You have a good memory.
Of course. It's rare for someone to buy every single type.
James laughed, and I felt my face getting hot. I cleared my throat and continued. Since I liked the sweets so much, I decided to visit the main store. James served me there too, and after a few visits,
I was the one who asked her out.
You asked her?
Mike looked genuinely surprised.
Yes. I was really happy to hear her say how delicious the sweets were. I was in a bit of a slump at the time. But Emily's words saved me.
You never told me that. You were in a slump?
Yeah. I was struggling to come up with ideas for new summer sweets. Then we started talking about the fireworks festival, and you said it would be wonderful to capture the moment the fireworks went off.
I suddenly realized. Could it be that sweet?
Yes. I made it based on your advice.
I remembered the sweet with the fireworks design on the surface and felt my face heating up again.
Emily saved me. And I fell for her seeing how excited she got picking out sweets.
James said this seriously, without a hint of joking, and Mike looked taken aback. But he still tried to find a flaw in us.
But surely a traditional shop like yours needs an heir, right? She can't possibly.
He wanted to point out my infertility.
That's not a problem.
What?
I already have a child.
Really?
James nodded.
Actually, I'm divorced too. I have a son from my previous marriage. My ex-wife left after cheating on me and abandoned our son. Quite the opposite of your situation.
Wow, so you two are perfect for each other as fellow victims of cheating.
Mike laughed awkwardly.
My son is very fond of Emily and already calls her mom.
That's right. He's adorable.
Are you forcing him to call you that?
Of course not.
So, do his parents approve?
I don't know what you mean by approve.
I mean, don't you think his parents would be upset about their precious son dating an older woman who's been divorced? Those traditional families care about appearances.
There's no problem. In fact, they've welcomed me warmly. Almost too warmly, to be honest.
Really?
Mike looked at me with a sleazy smile, clearly doubting me. As I was about to look away, unable to bear his gaze, James stepped in.
My parents also have a 10-year age difference, with my mother being older. Do you think they'd care about our 9-year difference?
Your parents are like that?
Yes. They really like Emily. They say she's bright, polite, and very considerate. They believe she'll be a wonderful young proprietress and eventually the main proprietress.
James. I felt incredibly fortunate to hear such kind words about me behind my back. James' parents are a well-balanced couple. His mother manages the store so his father can focus on making sweets. They have clearly defined roles. After work, they enjoy drinks together, making them an adorable couple to watch.
So, there's no issue with my parents.
But there's still the issue with your son. Normally, kids don't take well to stepmothers.
I already told you, my son is very fond of Emily.
Maybe he's just trying to please you. Kids can be more mature than we think.
I don't think my son is pretending. Once, when I had an urgent matter and couldn't go with them, Emily and my son went out together. He said he had a great time.
Did you bribe him or something? That's dirty.
I did buy him ice cream, but that's about it. I think it's worse if a father's girlfriend wouldn't even do that.
My son.
James interjected.
My son came back saying he wished Emily could be his real mom. His biological mother was often out partying and wasn't home much.
So, he'd be fine with anyone kind, not just Emily.
James shook his head.
No, my son didn't take to the woman I dated before Emily.
I'd heard that story before. I was really nervous when I first met the son. I was worried he'd reject me. He didn't, but he wouldn't look me in the eye either. I remembered that day, introducing myself while he hid behind James.
But Emily kept talking to him every time she visited. Most people give up after 2 or 3 tries.
I was worried he might dislike it, but now I'm glad I kept at it.
My son, probably due to his mother's influence, was especially shy around women. He must have felt betrayed. But Emily managed to win his trust, which is why my parents also trust her.
They seem to like her a lot.
Yes, unlike your parents, who hated me.
Really?
Yeah, at first, they called me a pushy woman who walks ahead of her husband. Later, they said I was useless for not giving them a grandchild.
Do people really say such things? That's incredibly rude.
James looked at me with genuine confusion. Mike's face turned slightly red. I wondered if he was actually feeling embarrassed. They really said those things. So I'm very happy to have a good relationship with James's parents. I enjoy chatting with your mother, and I share a love of good drinks with your father.
I was surprised to see you 3 having a party without me.
We decided to enjoy some good drinks while you were away. James and I smiled at each other, and Mike fell silent. I added, Mike, you said I was deceiving James, but I've told him and his parents about my difficulty in having children.
I was the one who told my parents. They didn't seem to mind at all and just said, "Oh, it doesn't matter."
There's no way everything's that convenient.
It was satisfying to see Mike looking frustrated. But it is. They even said they'd be thrilled to have someone like me as their daughter-in-law.
I'm lucky to have met Emily. My parents and my son adore her, and she's kind, cheerful, and responsible. Thank you, Mike.
James expressed his gratitude to Mike. His posture perfect.
Thank you? For what?
For divorcing Emily, of course.
What?
If you hadn't divorced her, I wouldn't have been able to marry her. I'm grateful you didn't appreciate her and had an affair.
James, are you mocking me?
No, I'm sincerely grateful.
Mike couldn't find a way to respond to James's clear and genuine expression. James stood up straight and said firmly,
Do you understand now? Everyone supports my marriage to Emily.
In my mind, you were supposed to be unhappy after the divorce.
It's not fair to assume that. It's been 2 years. It's normal for things to change. You wanted to feel superior because your life isn't going well, right? Mike stared at the asphalt, clearly unsatisfied. Just then, a ringtone broke the silence.
It's me.
Mike answered his phone, which he had been using to show us family pictures, and started talking to someone. The area was quiet, so we could hear the other person's voice, likely at maximum volume.
Hello.
Finally, sign the divorce papers already.
I recognized the voice. Divorce papers, which means it was Linda sounding angry.
I told you, I'm not getting a divorce. Let's talk this out.
Why would I stay with a cheater?
You cheated on your husband to marry me. So what are you talking about?
I can't listen to this.
James muttered, making me laugh.
How will you manage without me? Raising a kid is expensive.
My previous job rehired me as a full-time employee. They even give bonuses. Plus, I know everything.
What do you know?
I know you got laid off.
What?
Wow.
How did you find out? I haven't told anyone yet.
You don't realize how small this community is. News like that spreads fast.
Mike, you got laid off from the company you were promoted at.
Shut up.
Don't tell me to shut up. Maybe you should be the one keeping quiet.
No, that's not what I meant.
No excuses. You're going to pay alimony and child support.
Alimony too?
Of course, I've already filed a claim against the other woman as well.
You found out her contact information?
That's what private investigators are for.
Mike's hand holding the phone trembled. Was he more afraid of the divorce or the money he'd have to pay?
Please. I got fired from my job. I can't afford to pay both alimony and child support.
I don't care. Pay up.
I'm begging you.
Mike pleaded repeatedly to the person on the other end of the call, like a bird pecking.
He looks like a bobblehead.
True, that fits too.
Anyway, I'll have the lawyer send the papers again. Make sure you sign them this time.
Wait, please.
The call ended abruptly with a harsh tone. Mike's hand dropped, all energy drained from him.
See? Marrying a younger woman doesn't guarantee happiness.
James ended the conversation neatly, and Mike slowly looked up. But he said nothing. You should be grateful I didn't ask for alimony. When I said this, Mike finally spoke.
Getting cheated on and losing my family because I cheated. It's a fitting punishment.
He laughed weakly, self-deprecating.
Are we done here? We're leaving now.
James put his arm around my shoulder, and started to walk away.
Where are you going?
What did he want by stopping us? There was nothing left to discuss.
We're going to our favorite French boutique
French boutique?
to get a dress made for Emily to wear at the store.
We're getting married soon, so I'll be introduced at the store. We're going together to choose the formal dress.
If she's going to be out front as the young proprietress, it has to be the right one. Though I think Emily would look good in any dress.
Hey, pick seriously.
But I really think you'd look great in any of them. A day won't be enough to choose.
That's an exaggeration.
I'm being serious.
When I glanced at Mike, his mouth was hanging open in shock.
Come on, let's go. We don't want to be late for our appointment.
You're right. Goodbye, Mike. Take care. Leaving Mike standing there, James and I walked away arm in arm. Later, James told me that Mike and Linda's divorce was finalized.
I explained everything to her. She agreed to work at a branch away from the main store.
Thank you. Even though I said I didn't mind, working at the same place would be awkward.
She didn't put up a fight. She even thanked us for keeping her on when we could have fired her.
I wouldn't be so heartless as to fire a single mother with a child.
That's one of the many reasons I love you, Emily.
Thanks. I had moved into the James's family home and was living there before we officially got married. I got along well with the store employees and the people from the main office, and there were no issues so far. James's mother was teaching me the duties of a young proprietress every day. With the store's long history, there was a lot to learn about the preferences of local VIPs and the etiquette at luncheon meetings. It was overwhelming but fulfilling.
You're a quick learner, Emily. I struggled so much and got scolded by my mother-in-law all the time.
James's mother's hearty laughter was a big help to me. It's almost too comfortable here.
I'm glad to hear that.
James gently placed his hand on my head. His mature gestures always surprised me. On the day Linda was to be transferred, she came to see me.
I deeply apologize for what happened before, and thank you for your kindness in this matter.
Linda sincerely thanked me and spoke politely, a stark contrast to her attitude 2 years ago. I can't fully forgive what happened back then, but I'm very happy now, so I won't dwell on it. Let's work together to make the store better. When I extended my hand for a handshake, she took it with both hands, grateful.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
With that, she moved to the other store. After things settled down, James and I had a small, quiet wedding and filed for a marriage certificate. Since it was a second marriage for both of us, the ceremony was simple but filled with happiness. And then, I found out I was pregnant.
Really?
Yes, I went to the doctor today, so there's no doubt.
Yes. Yes.
James jumped up and down, shouting with joy, which brought his parents and son rushing over to see what was happening. His parents took my hands, crying with happiness. Then his son tugged at my clothes, looking at me curiously.
Mom,
What is it?
am I going to have a little brother?
It could be a brother or a sister.
Either is fine. Am I going to be a big brother?
Yes, you are. I patted his head.
I'm so happy. I'll help you, Mom.
That's my boy.
As I rubbed my belly, I felt immense joy for the new addition to our family and looked forward to the lively days ahead with them.
Our family's gathering is important. If you don't come back, I'll force you to get a divorce.
At my late dad's funeral, Sarah's sudden outburst left me frozen in place. I couldn't understand her nerve to continue spouting nonsensical words. I had reached my limit. Just as my anger was about to erupt, someone appeared behind me and delivered a shocking statement to Sarah. My name is Rachel, and I'm a 40-year-old handmade artist. I've been married to my husband, Paul, for 20 years now. Paul runs his restaurant. The whole family is a business person. His dad, John, owns a construction company, and his older sister, Mary, runs a nail salon. His younger sister, Emily, is a lawyer and is about to open her own office. I've had intense conflicts with his mom, Sarah, even before we got married. My dad, Robert, and John have been best friends since their childhood. Because of that, Paul and I often visited each other's homes and grew up feeling like siblings until high school without seeing each other as potential partners. But things changed when we hit adolescence. I started to feel attracted to Paul's comfort and kindness, and I confessed to him. Paul felt the same way, and we started dating. We decided to let our parents know first, and after 6 months of dating, we informed them. However, Sarah was strongly opposed. She never expected us to start dating, and her attitude changed drastically the moment we told her. Since then, she's been very harsh and has viewed me as an enemy.
What did you just say?
Sarah glared at me with eyes full of hatred, as if she were looking at an enemy. Then she suddenly threw the TV remote, which was nearby, directly at my face.
You've got to be kidding me.
What are you doing, Mom?
I have pretty good reflexes, so I managed to dodge the attack. With my hand on my chest in shock, I looked at Sarah, whose eyes were bloodshot. Paul and John widened their eyes and restrained Sarah, who tried to lash out even more. John desperately tried to calm her down, but Sarah wouldn't listen and kept screaming.
I said you've got to be kidding. Dating Rachel. I won't accept it. I won't allow it.
Stop saying nonsense. Calm down.
Paul couldn't help but shout at Sarah's outrageous behavior. John, standing next to her, also shouted at her, but it seemed she didn't hear him. Sarah glared at me with a terrifying expression and spat out curses.
I'm really sorry about how awful Mom was. Lately, it's been getting worse, and even Dad and I can't handle her.
Sarah must be really traumatized by Mary and Emily leaving. After that, Sarah disappeared into her room, saying she didn't want to see my face. John and Paul tried to talk to her, but they were turned away.
It's pathetic. I'm really sorry.
Don't worry about it. Sarah's behavior has a lot to do with Paul's older sister, Mary, and his younger sister, Emily. Sarah has always been prone to hysterics. She has a personality that finds it hard to stay calm, and she would throw tantrums over the smallest things. Because of this, Emily often argued with her, and Mary became exhausted. Both of them ended up despising Sarah. Sarah, being very intelligent herself, wanted to raise Mary and Emily to be just as smart and aimed to get them into prestigious universities. Because of this, she forced them into an intense study regimen, similar to what we now call education-conscious mother. However, for Mary and Emily, this was pure torture.
Mary and Emily were naturally good at sports. They had planned to go to prestigious schools for volleyball and basketball, which they excelled in, but Mom was completely against it. Our house was a battlefield every day with things flying around during their fights.
At that time, the economy was bad, and John's company was on the brink of bankruptcy. As a result, John was overwhelmed with his work and couldn't take care of family matters, leaving Mary and Emily in Sarah's hands.
Mom was at her breaking point due to the dire situation and attempted to take her own life, which forced Mary and Emily to give up on their dreams.
Seeing Sarah leaning over the balcony, Mary and Emily panicked and restrained her. Terrified by Sarah's violent outburst, they had no choice but to abandon their dreams and comply with her demands. Eventually, both of them reached their limit with the situation. Despite Sarah's efforts to stop them, they moved to New York when Paul was in high school. It takes 2 hours by plane to get from their hometown to New York. They thought that being this far away would lessen Sarah's control over them. They rented a room in the same apartment and lived together for a while. Sarah was mentally exhausted by what Mary and Emily had done, and from that point on, she started to depend heavily on Paul. I wonder if I'll feel the same way when I have kids, not wanting to let them go.
I doubt it. It's not just about not wanting to let them go. It's more like a desire to control rather than to possess. She wants to keep us close as her puppets to manipulate.
Paul's eyes darkened. Our house is located directly across the street from Sarah's house. An apartment across from us happened to have a vacancy, and I suggested to Paul that moving there might make Sarah feel more at ease. Paul was against the idea, but I approached Sarah. I believed that eventually she would have to accept it, so I stood firm in my decision. Mary and Emily still showed no signs of returning home. In fact, to distance themselves further from Sarah, they have now moved to a location that is a 2-hour flight from New York. They informed us that they are living comfortably away from Sarah.
Sometimes I wonder, would it be better for you if you were with another man? I worry that by dragging you into this complicated family situation, I'm making you unhappy. I'm really sorry.
Every time Paul apologized, I would cheer him up with a bright smile that could dispel the gloom. I knew what I was getting into when I chose to be with you, so instead of feeling down, let's think about how to win Sarah over. It's better to look forward than to dwell on the past.
Rachel, you're really amazing.
For me, this situation is like a game to conquer. How can I get stubborn Sarah to accept us? If I secure support from those around her and create a situation where she has no choice but to acknowledge us, maybe she'll give in. How can I win her over? For someone like me, who believes in making the best of tough situations, this wasn't something Paul needed to apologize for. However, Paul was suffering more than I was. Sarah's hostility towards him intensified in my absence, and his mental strain caused him to lose a lot of weight. Realizing that things couldn't go on like this, I decided to consult with Mary and Emily, who had been friends with me since childhood. As soon as they heard about the situation, both Mary and Emily made time in their schedules and flew over to see me. Emily listened to the detailed story with her mouth agape, while Mary expressed her anger openly.
Mom did that.
That's insane. It's embarrassing to think that such a person is our mom.
At this point, Emily was working as a paralegal, and Mary was a budding nail technician. Despite their busy schedules, they made time to discuss what we should do next.
What did Dad say? Did he mention anything?
Two of them, whom I hadn't seen in a while, looked more mature and somewhat sophisticated. Having left home and found themselves, they seemed vibrant and full of life. Sarah was so agitated that we sent her back home yesterday. John apologized profusely before leaving, but he didn't say anything specific about Sarah.
I can't believe she started treating you like that, too. It's unforgivable.
Moms always had a tendency to overreact. I figured she'd be upset when she heard about your relationship, but I didn't think it would get this bad.
I'm going to tell her off and ask her what she's thinking, acting like this at her age.
Emily had a much worse relationship with Sarah than Mary did, especially when it came to her career path. The reason was that Sarah was the only one who opposed Emily's dream of becoming a lawyer. Even though Emily tried to fulfill Sarah's wish by graduating from a prestigious university and pursuing a career in law, Sarah kept opposing it, saying Emily would never make it.
I snapped when she mocked me, saying, "You're just a money waster." So I ran away and sought refuge at Mary's place.
When I asked Emily why she had run away back then, she told the story casually. Emily has always had an optimistic outlook, while Mary likes to plan things meticulously and act accordingly. It's probably because they are so different that they enjoy being together. I was relieved to see that Mary and Emily were still getting along well after moving to New York. I expressed my gratitude to Emily for her offer. "Thank you. I appreciate it, but I'll try talking to Sarah myself again. These things need to be faced directly. We're going to be family and support each other, so I can't run away."
Rachel, you're amazing. You make me feel inadequate.
Emily's just too emotional about it. But seriously, if anything comes up, talk to us, okay? We're here to help.
After expressing my gratitude for their concern, I told them I would try talking to Sarah again the next day. They stayed at my parents' house for a few days. They spent a pleasant time with my parents, enjoying each other's company after a long while. The next day, I reported back to Sarah. But the result was the same. She was completely against it. In fact, she had an even worse hysterical outburst than before, leaving me at a loss. When Mary and Emily heard what happened, they rushed over and intervened. Thanks to their help, Sarah finally agreed to our relationship. Apparently, their logical persuasion left her with no arguments. We managed to get married after that, but that's when the real nightmare began.
Can't you even do this? When I got married, I handled these tasks perfectly.
Sarah insisted that we live together as a condition for our marriage. She likely wanted to harass me until we divorced. However, I was used to Sarah's abuse, and I had developed my tolerance. So instead of being intimidated by her harassment, I responded cheerfully and positively. "Wow, that's amazing. You really are incredible, Sarah. I'm so glad you can handle this because I definitely can't." Sarah only intended to demonstrate and criticize, but her face turned bright red when she realized I was cleverly using her efforts, and she started screaming complaints in a shrill voice. But I wasn't bothered by her tantrums. I let her words go in one ear and out the other and continued cleaning while humming a tune. Both Paul and John were stunned as they watched. They hadn't expected me to handle things with such composure. I thought our married life would be okay. Some time passed, and then one day it happened. My dad suddenly passed away. The cause was heart failure. On the morning he died, my mom called me, and I was in a state of shock. Even I was mentally devastated and didn't have the courage to go see my dad one last time. However, Paul, worried about me, accompanied me, and thanks to him, I managed to go on the day of the funeral. When I called Sarah and John to inform them of my dad's sudden passing, John, who took the call, agreed and understood. He said he would inform Sarah as well, sparing me the trouble of having to tell her myself. His funeral was held at a funeral home where one of my dad's acquaintances worked. Wanting to give him a grand send-off, many people came, and tears welled up in my eyes from the overwhelming emotion. It was during my dad's funeral that an incident occurred.
Our family's gathering is important. If you don't come back, I'll force you to get a divorce.
On the morning of the funeral, just 3 hours before the service, Paul received a call informing him that a relative on his side of the family had also passed away. The person was a distant relative of Paul's, and when Paul contacted John, he was told that it would be enough for John to attend and that we didn't need to go. However, when we arrived at the funeral home, Sarah, who had arrived before us, greeted us with fury.
How dare you not prioritize your husband's family?
Sarah scolded me for an incomprehensible reason.
Why are you trying to attend your family funeral when one of our relatives has died? It's normal for a wife to prioritize her husband's family.
What nonsense are you talking about? Even if it's just me, Rachel is different. Robert has passed away. Don't say such ridiculous things on a day like this.
Since our marriage, Paul has constantly stood up to Sarah on my behalf. He has protested against her attitude, her language, and her treatment of me. Paul couldn't tolerate Sarah's inhumane behavior and kept trying to make her understand. However, it seems he had reached his limit. Even in front of all these people, Sarah was spouting incomprehensible logic, and Paul was fed up. Paul's desperate hope that she wouldn't say anything more embarrassing was unmistakably clear.
So what if he died? He was a lousy father who raised such a useless daughter. It's not like we need to attend. Just get ready quickly. Let one of his brothers be the chief mourner instead.
What? Are you kidding me? Hey, Mom. Wait a minute.
However, Sarah didn't understand Paul's feelings and continued to make outrageous statements, causing Paul to become furious, just as he grabbed her arm to stop her. My anger reached its peak, and I slapped her across the face. The sound of the slap echoed through the funeral home lobby.
What do you think you're doing?
Sarah staggered back, shocked by the sudden slap. Paul was stunned to see her like that. Immediately, people started rushing over to find out what had happened, and the situation escalated. Sarah held her cheek, both in pain and surprise, glaring at me. I finally unleashed all the anger I had been holding back. It's not, what do you think you're doing? You were saying ridiculous things, so I had to set you straight.
What?
Sarah looked as if she couldn't believe what had just happened. Tears of shock and pain welled up in her eyes, and people around us started asking what had happened. However, I ignored the voices around me and knelt down to meet Sarah's gaze as she lay on the ground. It's one thing to insult me, but what did you just say? Seeing the furious expression on my face, Sarah trembled with fear. She couldn't answer my question, too scared to speak. I repeated my question in an even deeper, more threatening voice. I asked you, what did you say about my dad? Sarah's shock was evident as she looked at me. Until now, I had never shown any defiance towards her. There was a reason for that. If I lost my temper like this, no one could handle it. I had always responded cheerfully and positively, out of gratitude to Paul, but mocking my dad was a different matter. I glared at Sarah with intense fury. My dad never treated his children as possessions. He was a good man who listened to his children's opinions. And you call him a lousy father? Don't make me laugh. Though I spoke with mocking tones, Sarah said nothing. No, she couldn't say anything. Her hands were trembling with fear, and she was backing away from me as if trying to escape. If my dad is a lousy dad, then what are you? A toxic parent.
What? Who are you calling toxic parent? Don't be so rude.
In high school, I clashed with my dad once during my rebellious phase. I was on the tennis team and was undefeated in middle school, with no rivals in sight. However, when I became a sophomore, a freshman who had national experience joined our team. After my first painful loss, I became withdrawn and stopped going to school. My dad wouldn't allow this, and we argued repeatedly about me going back to school. When I finally told him why I didn't want to go, he laughed it off with a bright smile.
It just shows how much you love tennis. That's wonderful. Until you're ready, live your life as you see fit. I can't stand people who run away without giving a reason. Running away isn't something to be ashamed of. If you're feeling down, then feel down all the way. Just be honest with us about how you feel. If you do that, your mom and I will always protect you from anyone who mocks you. Don't forget, we're always on your side.
He said this while roughly patting my head. At that moment, I deeply thought, I'm so glad he's my dad. I'm proud to be their daughter. There are no better parents than mine. Since then, I've respected my dad. Being ridiculed about my wonderful dad made it impossible to stay calm. Then you shouldn't call someone else's beloved father lousy. At the very least, my dad was far more respectable than you. He never tried to control his children or treat them like his possessions. I completely lost my temper and started yelling at Sarah, not caring who was watching. Hearing the commotion, the venue staff rushed over. Other relatives also gathered, asking what was going on. Sarah, holding her cheek, began to scream that she was the victim.
How barbaric, slapping someone suddenly and yelling at them in public. You're the worst. What kind of upbringing did you have?
Some of the relatives, who didn't know the full story, took Sarah's words at face value and started whispering among themselves. I tried desperately to clear up the misunderstanding, but Sarah started crying loudly, and everyone was concerned about her. She had completely outmaneuvered me. Through her hair, she gave me a sly look, mocking me. If this continues, Sarah will get exactly what she wants, and I'll be seen as the bad guy. All tried to explain the situation, but everyone was too focused on the sobbing Sarah to listen properly. Just 3 hours earlier, I never would have imagined we'd be in this mess. Who could have thought that 3 hours later, we'd be in this kind of chaos? As I was wondering what to do, it happened.
If anyone needs to answer about their upbringing, it's you, making a spectacle of yourself like this.
To my surprise, John, who was supposed to be with the other relatives, suddenly appeared. Neither Paul nor I expected John to come, so we were both surprised. But no one was more shocked than Sarah. Her eyes widened in surprise.
I just came to check things out and then planned to come back on the day of the funeral. Then I got a call from Mary saying you were causing a scene at the venue, so I rushed back.
Behind John, Mary and Emily were smiling broadly at me. Mary and Emily were also familiar with my dad. I later learned that Mary and Emily, who had been fed up with Sarah since they were young, often visited our house and stayed over long before I could even remember.
Whenever we said we didn't want to go home, Robert always let us stay over. Dad felt safe knowing we were at Robert's place and gave us permission to stay.
He was like a second dad to us, teaching us volleyball and basketball.
They would say this with a smile and often shared fond memories of my dad with me. This was my dad's funeral. Mary and Emily were also attending the funeral and happened to witness the entire exchange. Mary immediately contacted John. Emily recorded the entire incident with a video camera to capture evidence. They exposed Sarah's lies, proving that I hadn't done anything wrong.
Now it's proven that Rachel didn't do anything wrong.
Everyone was shocked by the video evidence playing, and they confronted Sarah, demanding an explanation. Realizing she was in a precarious position, Sarah panicked. Shouts of anger erupted from all around her.
If you're going to insult Robert, we won't stand for it.
Do you know how many people he helped?
Disrespecting the deceased is unforgivable. If you're going to talk like that, leave. It's disgusting to have someone like you here.
The crowd's anger quickly turned towards Sarah. Faced with the onslaught of insults, Sarah's anger also reached its peak. Ignoring John's presence, she began yelling back at the attendees.
What? Like mother, like daughter, right? How can you talk to people like that? Paul, you should cut ties with this woman right away. If you divorce her now, you can still come home.
You're right. I should get a divorce from this terrible woman.
What? Everyone was stunned by John's unexpected agreement with Sarah's outburst, and they all turned their surprised gazes towards him.
That's right. You finally understand how I feel. Divorcing this woman is the best thing for Paul.
Thinking John was on her side, Sarah rushed over to him, clinging to his arm with shining eyes. Seeing Sarah and John like that, I felt despair. Divorce. John, why? I've been betrayed by John too. Then John thrust a piece of paper towards Sarah.
It's disgraceful to have someone like you in my family. I don't want to be known as the husband of someone so shameful. Sign this now. We're done today.
It was a completed divorce form, already signed by John. John,
why?
Realizing that John hadn't betrayed us and was actually on our side, both Paul and I brightened up immediately. In contrast, Sarah was stunned by the sudden turn of events, struggling to comprehend what was happening.
I overlooked things because Rachel was managing to deal with you. Honestly, I planned to kick you out of the house much earlier.
What are you talking about?
John had known about Sarah's mistreatment of me since shortly after our marriage. To John, I was like his own daughter. After all, I was the beloved wife of Paul, the daughter he had promised his best friend to take care of. He considered me part of his family. John couldn't forgive Sarah for treating me poorly and had even consulted me about divorcing her. He told me that if I agreed, he would get rid of Sarah.
But it was Rachel who stopped me from doing that.
In truth, I wanted to agree with John's proposal. However, I knew that Sarah's tight hold on Paul was because she cared deeply about him. Her feelings for Paul weren't entirely bad. I didn't mind putting up with her insults, so there was no need for a divorce. Just knowing that John was willing to support me in that way was enough, so I stopped him from going through with his divorce.
Yet you trampled on Rachel's kindness and even went so far as to insult her parents. I've had enough. I don't want to see your face anymore.
How could this be?
Sarah had likely let her guard down, thinking she wouldn't be divorced despite her behavior. Sarah showed a look of panic in response to John's testimony. No one was concerned about Sarah's distress. Instead, they praised John.
So, sign this. We don't need someone like you in our family.
No way.
What?
Everyone thought this was the end for Sarah. However, she hung her head and unexpectedly refused. Then she suddenly lifted her head, wearing a crazed smile, and started provoking us.
Who do you think you are, making me sign this? I will never agree to a divorce. I won't accept such a reason for a divorce.
You.
John's face contorted with anger as Sarah continued to mock him. Sarah continued to provoke John's emotions even further.
Too bad. I have no intention of divorcing, and you don't have enough grounds for a divorce, so you can't even take me to court. Since you can't divorce me, you'll have to keep supporting me.
Completely confident in her victory, Sarah laughed triumphantly, taunting John. However, Emily, with a big smile, stepped forward.
You can get divorced, you know?
What?
Emily, now in professional mode, appeared with glasses on and spoke surprising words.
I said Dad can get divorced.
What are you talking about?
It seems you think a divorce is difficult, but take a look at this.
Emily handed over a very thick brown envelope. Sarah nervously checked the contents. As Sarah's face turned pale, she looked at John in fear and collapsed to the floor. Everyone around exchanged looks and then turned their gaze to Emily, seeking an explanation. She adjusted her glasses with her index finger and smiled as she cornered Sarah.
The man in this picture, do you recognize him?
No, this is.
Oh, you don't recognize him? Well, let's show everyone else.
Stop it.
Emily snatched the documents from Sarah, raising them high for all to see. Sarah reached out to grab it, but Emily, standing at an impressive 5 feet 7 inches, was too tall for her. On the other hand, Sarah was very short at only 4 feet 9 inches. As a result, Sarah couldn't even reach Emily's wrist, her hands swiping through the air futilely. As everyone watched the two of them, their eyes fell on the documents. Seeing the person pictured, gasps of surprise echoed around the room.
Hey, is that?
The person in the picture is.
The man in the picture was none other than Robert's brother, Matthew, my uncle. As soon as everyone recognized him, all eyes turned towards Matthew. His face drained of color and he looked panicked, realizing the situation he was in. Matthew despised my dad. My dad was an exceptional person, while Matthew felt he never received any recognition. Emily had found out that Matthew often complained that everything would be better if my dad wasn't around. It was Sarah who approached Matthew. Sarah couldn't stand how close John and my dad were. She wanted to be number one in John's life so badly that she became jealous of his friend and let it fester. Matthew, aware of this, became intrigued by Sarah. The two eventually developed an affair.
Getting involved with your husband's best friend's brother? You're quite the shameless woman. Just hearing about it makes me sick.
Even in professional mode, Emily's true feelings were evident. Hearing this, I glared at Sarah, filled with anger and resentment. You lecture me about propriety as a daughter-in-law, yet what is this behavior? How dare you get involved with a relative and talk about propriety? Don't make me laugh.
Shut up. It's all your fault.
What? I couldn't believe her audacity as she glared back at me. Then, in a fit of rage, Sarah stood up, pointed at me, and began hurling unreasonable accusations.
If you hadn't married into this family, I wouldn't have become such a terrible person. None of this would have been exposed, and I could have continued living peacefully. You ruined everything.
Enough already.
Just as I was about to retaliate against Sarah's unjust accusations, Paul, who had been silent until now, stepped in between us and snapped at Sarah.
Rachel has done nothing wrong. In fact, neither my dad, Robert, nor anyone else is at fault. The only ones to blame are you and Matthew.
Paul pointed at Matthew, his stern gaze fixed on Sarah.
Do you have any idea how much our family has suffered every time you threw one of your hysterical fits? We're all fed up with you. We're overjoyed that Dad finally mentioned a divorce. We've wanted you out of the house for a long time.
What? How can you say that to your own mother?
Don't start pretending to be a decent mom now.
Sarah's face twisted with anger as she listened to Paul's heartfelt outburst. Then Mary stepped in, her voice filled with rage.
I never once felt like you raised us properly. You have no idea how much we, your children, have suffered because of you.
Mary, usually calm and collected, spoke with uncharacteristic fury.
It was Dad and Robert who taught us about life's hardships and joys, not you. We have no memories of being genuinely loved by you. And now you want to act like a mother? Don't make me laugh. You have no right to insult Robert. If you keep hurting Rachel, I won't forgive you.
How dare you?
Mary's words, so satisfying to hear, lifted my spirits. Before Sarah could retort, my relatives began applauding Mary's speech. In no time, Sarah found herself isolated. Even Matthew abandoned her and fled the scene.
So, we're getting divorced. If you want to fight, bring it on. I have the funds to take this all the way.
No, wait, please, don't abandon me.
Realizing that John's mind was made up, Sarah clung to him, begging for forgiveness through her tears. However, John easily pushed her away. Then Sarah turned to me, desperately pleading.
Please, Rachel, stop John. I won't harass you anymore. From now on, let's live together in harmony and support each other. I've always really liked you, honestly, so please.
Sarah tried to cover her lies. She would say anything to avoid getting divorced from John. Seeing through her transparent motives filled me with disgust. Seeing how convenient her words were, I pushed her away with a bright smile. No thanks. I have absolutely no interest in building a good relationship with you.
Rachel?
She must have had the naive idea that an apology would be enough to get my forgiveness. I coldly spoke to Sarah, who had a look of shock on her face. Just your presence here is unpleasant. So could you please leave? I will never forgive you for what you said about my dad or for all the harassment. Don't blame anyone but yourself for being abandoned by John. Everything that has happened is because of your terrible behavior. Sarah, enraged by my words, reached out to grab me. But John and Paul restrained her. John called over a friend, and together they escorted Sarah out of the funeral home. In this way, I finally succeeded in settling my long-standing grievances. After that, Sarah and John divorced. Despite Sarah's staunch refusal to divorce until the very end, the evidence Emily gathered and the revelation of her affair at the funeral sealed the deal, and John successfully finalized the divorce. Taking advantage of John's divorce, Paul reported Sarah to the police. After the divorce, Sarah, having been kicked out of the house, repeatedly came back trying to visit. As a result, a restraining order was issued against her under the anti-stalking law. Sarah also visited Mary and Emily, but they all responded in the same way. Eventually, Sarah faced legal consequences. John also sued Matthew for compensation. Matthew made the pitiful excuse that Sarah had led him astray, but John wasn't having it and demanded financial compensation. Since then, we've enjoyed peaceful days. Paul and I had a child, and Mary and Emily also got married and had children.
Isn't it amazing that we all had children in the same year? It's amazing.
It's quite the coincidence, isn't it?
I'm just glad.
Having both of you back here to raise your children is such a blessing. Mary and Emily returned home during their pregnancies and now live here with their families. While I was thrilled to have them back, no one was happier than John. He apologized for the hardships they endured while he was busy with his work. Mary and Emily in unison said, "If you help with your grandchildren, all is forgiven," and smiles finally returned to everyone's faces.
It's all thanks to you, Rachel, because you never gave up and stayed with us.
As I looked at Paul's happy smile, I savored my own happiness as well.
Having a baby at that age, the child will definitely have developmental issues.
Her words changed the atmosphere in the waiting room instantly. Being a woman, a doctor, and having experienced pregnancy and childbirth herself, she should have had better things to say to a worried, expectant mother. Seeing me at a loss for words, she smirked maliciously. "I am Hillary, 40 years old. I work as a beauty consultant at a major department store and got divorced a few years ago. My first marriage was 5 years ago. I met my ex-husband John, who is 5 years younger than me, at a group blind date arranged by my younger colleague. I thought a doctor would be in high demand, but most women quickly distanced themselves from his geek appearance and manner of speaking. Even the colleague who invited me quickly moved on to target another man, but for some reason I couldn't walk away. Perhaps it was because neither I nor John, who looked uncomfortable with his hunched shoulders, were getting much attention from others. As I decided to stay and talk, I found his enthusiasm for his interests endearing, and I appreciated his effort to expand our conversation despite his awkwardness. We exchanged contact information and started our relationship as friends. John would contact me daily, and after meeting several times, I realized he was actually a diamond in the rough. As I took it upon myself to help him, he quickly improved, and our relationship deepened. After a year of dating, we decided to get married. My parents were thrilled, but his mom seemed concerned about my age. Although she eventually accepted our marriage, she appeared somewhat dissatisfied. Despite some unease, we had a grand wedding, inviting our colleagues and childhood friends.
Congrats on snagging such a handsome guy, Hillary.
It was my much younger childhood friend, Mary, who congratulated me. We first met at a large park in the neighborhood. She was 3 years old, and I was 10. I loved taking care of little kids, so in place of her parents who were chatting with their friends, I often played with her and the other children. Miraculously, our friendship continued, and she became like a little sister to me.
If plain Hillary can get married, then surely I can be happy too, right?
She said this with a carefree smile. I couldn't help but feel my smile stiffen. As an adult, she became a well-regarded doctor in our hometown, known for her beauty and brains, but her personality left much to be desired. Even as a child, she would use her cuteness to get special treatment from adults and then brag about it. When I told her I chose a career in beauty, she laughed and said, "No matter how hard you try, there are things you're born with, but you might be a good example for those people." Because of comments like that, I've never seen her with any female friends besides me. I invited her to the wedding because John said he wanted to invite his childhood friends. But honestly, if it hadn't been for our long history, I might have cut ties with her. Still, she came to celebrate, and seeing her hit it off with John over their shared profession made me feel uneasy. But I reminded myself that I was the one beside him. I was the one who saw potential in John, who was only interested in anime and overlooked by others. At the time, I believed without a doubt that I had found happiness that everyone envied. But reality was harsh, and happiness only lasted the first year. It started with quitting my beloved job at John's request, followed by daily calls from his mom, Sarah, pressuring me for grandchildren. John turned a blind eye to Sarah's demands. Moreover, he started echoing Sarah's hurtful remarks about my age. I couldn't take it anymore and confronted him after work. You knew I was at an age where natural pregnancy is difficult, right? Why won't you support me?
That's why I had you quit your jobs to reduce any strain on your body. You should understand that marrying into a family of doctors means we need an heir. You should put in some effort.
Does this guy really think everything can be fixed with effort, even though he's a doctor? Stunned by his unbelievable words, I watched as John quickly finished his business and went to the bedroom. Left alone, I wiped away my tears and quietly discarded the untouched dinner into the sink. Not long after, John stopped coming home, claiming he was busy with work. Though I felt lonely, I was somewhat relieved. Sarah's calls demanding grandchildren decreased, knowing her son was busy, and recently it felt awkward facing John. Still, deep down, I wanted my child too. Without the stress from Sarah, maybe once John settled down, we could naturally conceive. With that faint hope, I devoted myself even more to supporting John, hoping to give him some peace. But those days came to an abrupt end. One day, while John was in the shower, a message notification popped up on his phone. I knew I shouldn't look, but I couldn't turn away. The message suggested a physical relationship with flashing heart emojis. What shocked me most was that it was from my childhood friend, Mary. In disbelief, I confronted John after his shower. At first, he denied it, but when I showed him his phone, he quickly admitted to his affair. No way. Why would you do this? Explain it to me. John, irritated by my tearful voice, began to speak in a half-defiant manner. Mary had joined John's hospital about a year ago and made advances at him during her welcome party. John, never having experienced the attention of a young, beautiful woman, was elated and, under the influence of alcohol, started an affair with her that night. They continued seeing each other, and now she was pregnant with his child. Speechless from the shock, I listened as John continued.
It's your fault. You couldn't get pregnant, and even my mom says this marriage was a mistake.
Wait, does Sarah know about your affair?
Yeah, she found out by chance, but when I told her about the baby, she said I should divorce you and start over. Please, for the sake of her and the baby, agree to our divorce.
Feeling betrayed and panicked, John handed me a completed divorce form. His readiness made me feel even more miserable.
You don't have money for a lawyer, right? If you agree to the divorce, I'll pay alimony and give you a fair share of the assets. You can have this apartment too. It would be wise to comply.
By the time his words sank in, it was too late. John admitted to the affair, but I gave him back his phone with all the evidence. I had no proof, no witnesses who might side with me. Trying to gather evidence now would clearly be too late. My family lived far away, and I had spent all my savings on the wedding and this apartment, leaving no money for a lawyer. It was frustrating, but as I was unemployed at the time, I accepted John's offer. Shortly after the divorce was finalized, a significant amount of money was deposited into my account as John had promised. John then left the apartment, taking almost none of the furniture we had bought together. Betrayed by those close to me, I lived in a daze in the apartment I had been given, until I noticed the changing seasons and decided I couldn't go on like this. Determined to make a fresh start, I sold everything. As the room gradually emptied, I found myself looking forward, gaining the energy to search for a new job and a new place to live. It was only then that I felt ready to contact my parents. Not wanting to worry them, I told them the divorce was due to irreconcilable differences. They offered for me to come home, but since Mary's family lived nearby and I didn't want to burden my elderly parents further, I politely declined. I found a new job surprisingly quickly. Once I sold the apartment and lightened my load, I moved into an apartment near my new job, bringing only a bank account with more money and a few personal belongings. My new workplace was a salon that catered to an upscale clientele, requiring more refined manners and service than my previous job. Determined to start anew, I relearned everything from makeup to customer service. Thanks to my efforts, I began receiving more client requests, increasing both my responsibilities and my sense of fulfillment. One day, while I was diligently working, a matchmaking offer came up.
Hey, do you have someone special? If not, would you consider a match?
Excuse me?
I know someone who would be perfect for you.
The offer came from an elderly regular who liked me. I was nearly 40 and had no intention of remarrying, so I planned to politely decline. But she insisted. The match was a 42-year-old man, also divorced. He had divorced over a decade ago due to his ex-wife's excessive spending. If the introduction had come from a relative, it might have been easier to refuse, but it was a valued client. Unable to decline, I agreed to the match. We met directly at a designated restaurant. A few minutes after I started waiting, my match arrived, out of breath.
I'm so sorry to keep you waiting. Ouch.
As he entered the private room, he tripped on the step and fell. A dull thud echoed in the quiet room. Are you okay?
Sorry about that. I'm fine.
I hurried over to him, and our eyes met as he looked up. His nose and forehead were bright red, and the contrast between his serious appearance and the injuries made me laugh. I felt embarrassed for laughing, but he awkwardly scratched his head, sat down again, and bowed politely.
Thank you for meeting me today. My name is Greg Anderson.
That was how we met. Maybe thanks to the initial accident, it didn't take long for us to open up to each other. Though we only spent a few hours together, I was impressed by his polite mannerisms and drawn to his friendly and kind nature, along with his subtle leadership. I had come intending to refuse, but I couldn't say no. Rather, I wanted to see him again. Greg treated me like a treasure, a feeling of happiness I hadn't experienced with John. After a year of dating, Greg proposed, and we decided to get married. Although my parents were initially cautious due to it being my second marriage, they grew fond of Greg after meeting him. Instead of a formal ceremony, we rented a restaurant and held a modest wedding reception with just close family. There were no fancy dresses or elaborate decorations, but it was far more comfortable than the wedding with John. Life with Greg was simple but peaceful, and most importantly, living with someone who always cared for me made me truly happy. Given our ages, we didn't expect to have children and planned to enjoy our life together, hand in hand. One day, during these times, unable to shake off the summer fatigue, I went to the gynecology department of the general hospital my in-laws recommended, suspecting early menopause, only to find out that I was pregnant. What I thought was summer fatigue was actually morning sickness, and what I thought were menopausal symptoms were early pregnancy signs. Still in disbelief, I showed the ultrasound picture with the gestational sac to Greg and told him the test results. Greg looked at the ultrasound and then at me, his mouth opening and closing in shock. He gently touched my stomach.
Is this our baby?
As I nodded quietly, Greg let out a cheer, stood up energetically, and hugged me tightly.
Thank you. I'm so happy. I can't believe it. It's like a miracle.
Calm down. But really, is this good news? Just like he said, a natural pregnancy at our age is indeed a miracle. But thinking about our age, I couldn't fully rejoice. In fact, the hospital congratulated us but also thoroughly explained the risks of a late pregnancy. When the child turns 20, we'll already be 60. Our physical strength is declining, and I'm worried if we can even take care of a baby. In response to my words, Greg gently said,
Sorry, you're right. It's scary. It'd be a lie to say I don't worry about what others might think too. But this baby chose us. I want to be happy about that first.
With that, Greg hugged me softly and continued.
I'm thrilled about the baby, but you're still my number one.
I know, I'm happy too, but I'm also really anxious and honestly a little scared. But more than that, I'm overjoyed, and I can't imagine terminating this precious life that's come to us. I don't want to. Greg quietly nodded at my tearful confession.
Yeah, I feel the same. I know there are risks for you, and I'm sorry, but I want you to have our child. Please.
He pleaded with me. After that, we talked about the pregnancy many times. Even when we calmed down, our feelings remained the same. I want to have this baby. If possible, I want you to have the baby. We made up our minds and informed the doctor during the second checkup that we would proceed with the pregnancy and began making preparations. The obstetrician was experienced and very supportive, and the large, well-equipped hospital with a solid track record was reassuring. We then shared the miracle with our parents. Both my parents and his were surprised but supportive, and when we told them we were determined, they said they would help whenever needed. Later, I completed the necessary paperwork for pregnancy and childbirth. Then came the day for another checkup. Greg, who usually accompanied me, had an unmissable work commitment, so I was alone today. Remembering Greg reluctantly leaving for work after saying, "Call me immediately if anything happens," made me smile. My morning sickness had started to ease, and the baby was growing well. While flipping through a childbirth and parenting magazine in the waiting room,
Is that Hillary?
I heard a familiar voice that made my heart ache. It was my childhood friend, Mary, dressed head to toe in flashy designer brands.
Oh my gosh, it's been ages. Still as plain as ever. How have you been?
I've been good. Feeling uncomfortable, I lowered my gaze. She plopped down next to me with a grin and began talking about her life without being asked. After John left the apartment, he apparently moved in with Mary, who had been living alone, and they started living together. Although their relationship started from an affair, John's parents approved of it. Mary's parents didn't seem to know their engagement began with an affair, so things progressed smoothly, and they got married in less than 6 months. Given how grand our wedding was, it's no surprise everyone close to them knew about it. I suppose John thought it would become a juicy piece of gossip if he quickly divorced me and remarried a young doctor from the same hospital. Shortly after getting married, Mary and John transferred to another hospital. The efficiency of their actions showed their planning, which made me angry in hindsight. Now they've moved to a new place where no one knows them and, with parental support, bought a new home to start afresh.
I'm sorry, Hillary, for taking your husband, but considering the age difference, I was a better match for him. I'm expecting our second child now, and I've been so happy since marrying him.
That's good to hear. I responded dismissively, which seemed to irritate her as she raised her voice another notch.
By the way, why are you here, Hillary? Menopause? You're getting old after all. That's why you were dumped.
Hey, that's not true. Don't shout such nonsense.
Oh, but you don't look unwell. Wait, what?
A maternity brochures I was holding caught her eye.
Hillary, are you pregnant?
Yes, I am. I remarried and I'm almost 5 months along.
Are you going to keep it?
Yes, the doctor is supporting us. As I said that, she burst into laughter.
Is this doctor serious? Having a baby at your age, the child is bound to have developmental issues.
Her words instantly changed the atmosphere in the waiting room. Of course, they did. In a general hospital waiting room, there are people with various concerns. Some might be undergoing fertility treatment, but she didn't seem to care. You're a doctor too, right? How can you say such things? And besides, it's none of your business.
Why are you mad? I'm just worried as a doctor. Besides, your child will be embarrassed in the future. Imagine parent-teacher meetings. They might say, your grandma is here.
I couldn't believe my ears at her pretentious and offensive comments. As a woman, a doctor, and someone who has experienced pregnancy and childbirth, she should have had better things to say to a worried, expectant mother. Seeing me at a loss for words, she smirked maliciously. I couldn't stand it any longer. As I was about to leave, an elderly woman sitting next to me gently took my hand.
You don't need to leave. It's okay. I'll ask her to leave.
Huh?
Mary frowned suspiciously at the elderly woman's words. With sunglasses and a mask, I didn't recognize her at first, but I was sure it was her. The elderly woman stood up, removed her sunglasses, and smiled at Mary.
Didn't you hear me? I said, leave. If you can say such things without caring about the patients, you and your husband must be exceptionally good doctors. You can take care of yourselves.
Despite her refined demeanor, her authoritative tone made Mary hesitate.
What right do you have to say that? Hillary, if you know this old lady, do something.
If she says it, I can't.
Why not?
Because she's the wife of the chairman of this hospital.
What?
Yes, she was the former regular customer who introduced me to my husband Greg. And incidentally, she is also my aunt-in-law, one of the people who were most delighted by my pregnancy. As Mary stood there in shock, Aunt Sally continued.
We cannot inconvenience other patients by allowing you here.
Are you telling me to switch hospitals now? This is the only one close to us with decent facilities. I'm pregnant.
That's your problem, isn't it? First of all, we do not accept troublemakers in public places, whether they're pregnant or patients. Please leave.
Mary, realizing Aunt Sally wouldn't budge, glared at me furiously.
Remember that. You poor people are cocky.
Poor? Maybe once, but she's wealthy enough now to have a personal shopper.
What?
Because her husband is my nephew, an executive at the large medical equipment manufacturer Swan Group and the heir to the company.
The Swan Group?
Mary's face turned pale. I didn't know until after we married, but my husband's company is the largest in its field. dealing with hospitals nationwide, known to every medical professional. They also make substantial donations to numerous hospitals. At that moment, my husband, out of breath, rushed in. Apparently, Aunt Sally had contacted him, and he came during his lunch break. Usually gentle, his face was now filled with anger.
Are you all right? I heard everything from Auntie Sally. Are you the doctor who insulted my wife in public?
No, I mean,
The thought of someone like you working in a hospital is appalling. To prevent others from suffering like my wife, I will make sure this incident is shared with other hospitals.
My husband's words were the final blow. Upon hearing them, Mary hurriedly left, almost running away. Shortly after, Aunt Sally informed her husband, the chairman, and this incident spread in two directions, eventually being shared with almost all hospitals nationwide. Apparently, Mary's arrogant attitude had often antagonized patients before, and her employer had been unhappy with her for some time. The same applied to John, and both ended up on a blacklist. Almost no hospitals were willing to hire them as a couple. Sometime later, I received an angry call from Mary. According to her, after being forced to leave the hospital, the two of them turned to John's parents for help and took over the clinic they ran. However, doctors who neglect their patients are not accepted by the local community. The clinic quickly went under, and John's parents were furious with them, leading to their estrangement. Now, they both work from morning till night to support their children, living a life far from luxurious. She lamented that their annual income has dropped to less than a third of what it used to be, but I felt no sympathy. I quietly ended the call and blocked her number. I never heard from her again. By the way, I successfully gave birth to a beautiful baby girl with chubby cheeks. She drinks plenty of milk, sleeps well, and is growing healthily. Greg is already smitten, saying things like, "I get teary-eyed just thinking about her marrying someone else someday." I didn't realize people actually said that. In the end, he said, "All right, I'm going to play with her as much as I can now," and bought lots of toys and other stuff. He seems likely to become a very doting dad, which worries me a little. No matter what happens in the future, no matter how tough it gets, we are determined to raise her with love and responsibility as a couple.
My name is Rachel Keller. I've been married for 10 years. My husband is a hard worker and very family-oriented. He's quite meticulous, and sometimes we go out as a family on his days off, just a regular family, really. He also treats my parents with great respect, and I think he's just the perfect husband. However, I recently caught him coming out of a hotel with his mistress. I couldn't believe my eyes, but it was unmistakably my husband, Stephen. The mistress looked younger than me, radiant. Oh, so he has someone he likes. That was my first thought. I'm pretty straightforward, often told by my parents that I'm super positive, clear and open. Perhaps because of this, my motto has always been to accept what comes and not chase what goes. When we got married, I had decided that if Stephen ever fell in love with someone else, I would gracefully step aside. And with all the men I've dated before, whenever they said they found someone else, I've always let go completely and moved on. So, it should be the same this time. But the fact is, seeing them arm in arm, looking so close, it really hurts. But there he is, looking so happy. Seeing my husband's face like that, I felt a storm raging inside me. So I approached them. Stephen, not expecting to run into his wife in front of the hotel, couldn't hide his shock.
Rachel.
Huh? Who's this? The woman looked back and forth between me and Stephen, clearly puzzled. No wonder she was confused. Stephen.
Rachel, this is, well.
I was in the way of your happiness, wasn't I? Those were the words that came out of my mouth.
No, it's not like that. There's a reason for this.
It's okay. I'm sorry. With that, I turned on my heel. Stephen was shouting, "No, it's not what it looks like," but the woman clung to his arm, preventing him from chasing after me. I started running away from Stephen. After running for a while, when I was sure he wasn't following, I stopped to catch my breath. Then, I reflected on what had just happened. No matter how many times I think about it, him coming out of that hotel means it's an affair. Or maybe it's serious. If that's the case, then he has chosen someone else over me. I began to walk slowly, pondering how things got to this point. No matter how straightforward I am, the betrayal still hurts. Although I used to decide on breakups easily, now that we are married, separating is painful. But he has chosen someone else, so I guess it's inevitable. I tried to convince myself, but my vision blurred all the same. Before I knew it, tears were streaming down my face. Our marriage was blissful. Even when I was busy with work, Stephen never complained and willingly did the nursery drop-offs and pickups. When our child had a fever, he'd take time off work to care for her. He always accepted my suggestions to go out as a family on weekends with a smile. Despite some men boasting about being the breadwinner, he never did that. Instead, he appreciated that our lifestyle was possible because we both worked. That's why I was able to focus on my career, start my own company, and expand the business. Out of gratitude to him, I bought a new house for my in-laws and gave him more than enough pocket money. No matter how tired I was, I tried to handle housework, childcare, and work to prevent him from getting stressed. I made time to visit his parents' house and show them their grandchild. It was all for my husband, who always cared for me, and for our family. I believed our life together would last forever. I strive to be a good wife for that very reason. But perhaps Stephen had some complaints. I've heard that a husband's affair is sometimes blamed on the wife. That it's the wife's fault, leading the husband to be captivated by another woman. In the end, it's all my fault. Perhaps he had grievances but just never expressed them. Maybe I was too complacent, thinking everything was fine and depending too much on him. If that's the case, then maybe separating is really for the best, for his sake. If I love him, I should cleanly break it off and wish for his happiness. I know this without anyone telling me. Yet, for some reason, the storm in my heart won't subside. Why? No matter how many times I ask myself, I can't find an answer. I keep walking, and seeing other couples makes the pain surge anew. I had that phase with him once, so where did it go wrong? Why did it come to this? I always thought family was the most important thing, but it seems he wanted to prioritize being a man over family. This is a betrayal. A betrayal of the marriage vow. The anger of being betrayed. Yet, what I feel is not anger but pain and sorrow. And regret for not being able to make my husband happy. How could this happen? Then, a new storm hit. What about our daughter? It's not just me who's been betrayed. What will happen to her? She adores her dad and thinks living with him is her happiness. Yet, he betrayed her too. Should I forgive him? Should I? Thinking of our child only deepens the agony. Lost, I find myself reflecting on our married life. Those happy 10 years. They weigh heavily on me. If only I could pretend I never saw it. If only I could act as if nothing happened. Would everything then stay the same? But can I truly call that happiness? As night fell, I walked towards the home where my daughter was waiting. When I saw the lights of our house, I stopped. And there, I made a decision for the sake of my daughter waiting for me. Stephen came home late at night. What had he been doing? Spending a pleasant time with his mistress, perhaps? While waiting restlessly for him, I cooked dinner as usual, fed our daughter, faked a smile to conceal my feelings, and put her to bed at 9 p.m. with a goodnight kiss. Was there ever a night as painful as this? No, even on nights when I was too tired to move, none were as painful as this. The storm inside calmed, leaving a gaping void in its place. A hole so deep and dark. As my daughter fell asleep, I placed the divorce papers on the table and waited for Stephen's return. When I saw the lights of the house, I turned back, thinking of the divorce papers I had picked up from the office. To think that in the 10th year, I'd be looking at such a document. I picked up the pen several times but couldn't write, sighing deeply. I had just finished writing my name. And then Stephen returned. I greeted him with a smile, welcome home.
Yeah, I'm back. Rachel, about what happened today.
Stephen must have been pondering how to start this conversation. He spoke as if making a resolution. Removing his coat, placing his bag down, his actions as usual.
It's not what you think.
Please stop. I don't need excuses. Because it's my fault, isn't it? I was desperately trying to smile.
Why? Why is it your fault, Rachel?
Because when a husband cheats, it's the wife's fault, right? Your heart wandered because I didn't understand you, Stephen. It's all my fault.
That's not true. And about her.
I'm sorry. When I hear excuses, I just get angry. I don't want to yell or fight. So, let's end this cleanly.
End it? Why?
Because you have someone you love, don't you? Why should I stay with you when you have someone else? That won't make you happy.
I don't want to leave you, Rachel. And there's our daughter Mary too. Don't talk about separating.
What are you saying? You chose her over me and Mary, didn't you? Yet you won't leave either of us. Don't you feel sorry for her? That's just sad for her.
No, it's different. It's not that serious with her.
Not serious? That's a lie. I don't know what kind of relationship you want, but I think she's serious. I've had you all to myself for 10 years. So now, I'll step aside for her. I think that's best for both of us. I want you to be happy.
I am happy enough.
Please, sign this. Your happiness is my happiness.
No, I'm sorry. Please, I don't want to break up this family.
It's not about breaking, Stephen. You're just starting a new life. I don't think of it as breaking. I love you so much that I just want you to be happy. Please sign this. I don't want to stand in your way any longer.
Rachel.
No matter how much Stephen said he didn't want a divorce or tried to talk about starting over, I had no intention of stopping the divorce. Finally, Stephen gave in and signed the papers.
I'm sorry, Rachel. It's all because I harbored feelings for another woman that I made you write this divorce paper.
It's okay, don't worry about it. Remember what I said when we got married? If you ever fell in love with someone else, we would part ways cleanly.
I never thought you could actually do it.
I never thought it would be this painful to decide to leave you. But if staying with me means you miss out on happiness, then it's better we part ways.
Why can you sacrifice yourself so much? You should be scolding me, throwing your anger at me. It would be easier for me.
You might find it easier, but I won't do something just to make you feel better. I don't want to end in a fight. If you and she can be happy, then that's my happiness. So I won't throw my emotions at you. I'm not that kind. I don't think of forgiving you for betraying our daughter. Being treated kindly can be painful, right?
You care about me that much. Rachel, you're like a goddess.
A goddess, huh? I wonder what happens when you betray a goddess. Divine retribution can be quite painful, you know. But then again, it's not a god but me, a human, who'll deliver it. Before we divorce, there's something I want to know.
What is it?
Why did you have feelings for another woman? What was wrong with me?
No, Rachel, there was nothing wrong with you. You were a perfect wife. It was just my weakness.
So, I wasn't at fault?
Yeah, maybe too perfect, if anything.
Too perfect?
Yeah, you were too perfect, and it made me lose confidence. Maybe that's why my feelings shifted towards something imperfect.
What? That's no excuse at all. So, can you tell me about her? Her name, age, what does she do?
Her name is Sarah Parker. She's 35. Works at a cafe. I used to frequent that cafe, and that's where we became acquainted. I thought she was cute and struck up a conversation. We started going out for meals, watching movies, and gradually, my feelings shifted.
She must be very cute then.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, thank you. You can have this luxury condo.
What?
I'll be taking custody of our daughter. That's enough for me. It's not easy to find a place like this, and you'd want to live in a nice home as newlyweds, right?
What will you do, Rachel?
I'll look for another apartment. But can you wait a week? I need that time to find a new place.
No, you should stay here, Rachel.
It's too big here. And living in this room, filled with our memories, would be too painful for me.
I see. All right, thank you. She'll probably be happy about it.
No, don't mention it. I'll fully support your happiness. I said this with a broad smile on my face. The next day, I visited my in-laws' house to apologize to George and Diana, who had always treated me like their own daughter and loved my daughter, for not being able to keep Stephen's heart. George, Diana, I'm really sorry. I couldn't hold on to Stephen's heart, it's all my fault.
He had an affair, really?
Yes, so I got him to sign the divorce papers. I'll be leaving the current apartment within a week. Then, he can remarry her with no holds barred.
How could this happen? Why divorce?
It's my fault. So, I thought stepping aside is the best way for Stephen to be happy.
It's not your fault, Rachel. He's the one who did wrong. Well, if you can't forgive that, then divorce is inevitable, I guess.
I'm truly sorry for being such an imperfect wife and causing George and Diana distress. I spoke earnestly, blaming myself for my husband's infidelity and apologizing sincerely. George and Diana understood and said it's Stephen who should be apologizing.
Poor Mary, if that's the case, it can't be helped.
Yes. I'll have custody of our daughter. I'm grateful to him for leaving her with me.
A mother's care is best, better than being raised by a stepmother.
Thank you. I expressed my gratefulness sincerely and left my in-laws' house, never to return. Leaving there, I went straight to the district court to submit the divorce papers. Then I began looking for a new apartment, moving out of the familiar condo within a week. After moving, I decided to meet with the mistress. She must have heard about the divorce from Stephen. She appeared before me, looking triumphant. You're Sarah Parker, right?
Yes, that's right.
I submitted the divorce papers about a week ago. I believe they have been accepted, so you can remarry now.
Huh.
You're planning to remarry, right?
Yes, I suppose. So, why did you want to meet me?
Just to inform you about the divorce. I have to make sure you know you can remarry since he might not have told you.
Huh, I knew about the divorce, but I didn't think you'd actually do that. Are you really that kind?
Well, who knows? But I've decided to support you too.
Why would you support us? I took your husband, you know?
True, you could say you took him, but he chose you. So, I've decided to support you too in finding happiness. If you don't become happy, then my stepping aside would be meaningless.
Huh, you really are strange.
She called me foolish. But Fu is truly the foolish one. I don't think affairs are as sweet as she believes. Do you know about my husband's job?
Job?
Yes, what does he do?
I don't know the details, but I know he was headhunted by a major company and became a department head.
Yes, that's right. He's a department head with a high salary.
Letting go of a man with such a high salary, are you okay with that?
I've lived with him for 10 years. Now it's your turn to be happy with him. I'm fine with it.
Such a kind person.
But I will take alimony and child support.
That's fine. He's a department head, after all. I don't know how much the alimony is, but it's probably nothing for him. Child support isn't much monthly either. Maybe he could pay the lump sum amount until your child reaches adulthood. That way, we can sever ties.
That would be helpful, but it should be until she graduates college, not just until she's an adult.
That's no problem at all. Don't you think he has enough money for that? If it means cutting ties with you, I'd prefer he pays it all at once.
Then please suggest that to him.
I will. He listens to everything I say.
Good. We've moved out, so you two should live in that luxury condo. Perfect for newlyweds, right?
He said he'd take the condo, so I guess that's where we'll live.
Stephen is a kind man who values family, so I believe you'll be happy.
I suppose so.
She looked at me triumphantly again. But if he were truly kind, this situation wouldn't have occurred. A genuinely family-oriented person wouldn't stray for such trivial reasons. She must think she'll be fine. It's not that simple. I wanted to flash a triumphant smile too, but it wasn't the time for that yet, so I just kept a small smile. But my praising Stephen seemed odd to her, prompting a question.
I get that you're a nice person, but how can you forgive being cheated on?
It's my fault for not keeping his interest on me. He said he hated my perfection. Must have felt suffocated, I guess. Not so perfect if I couldn't see that, huh?
You blame yourself, huh? But he's a catch, a department head. Aren't you worried about letting that go?
If you're happy, that's all that matters to me. I value happiness over money. Besides, he gave me custody. That's enough for me.
You really are strange, almost foolish.
Are you planning a wedding?
Of course.
Well, I know someone who owns a big wedding venue. Booking there usually takes months. Would you like me to put in a word? Might get you a discount.
Really? That would be great.
Yes, they have gorgeous wedding dresses too. You want a lavish wedding, right?
Sure, doesn't have to be cheap though. He's a department head after all. But I'd like to get married soon.
Got it. Let me know when you're ready, and I'll arrange everything.
Any time is good. We're ready to get married now.
That sounds exciting.
You're such a good person.
Am I? I hope it's the best wedding ever. That night, I heard from Stephen. He was excited, saying Sarah told him about the wedding venue arrangement.
You're handling the venue too?
Yes, my friend owns it. They said they'd make it the best wedding possible, even though it's usually a 6-month wait.
It's that busy.
Yes, it's a famous place. But they promised to make room for you.
Thank you. I don't know how to repay you. It's me who's at fault here.
It's fine. I'd do anything for your happiness.
I'll pay the alimony and child support in full. It's manageable.
Good to hear, that eases my mind.
Sarah is happy, but she hates that we're still connected. So, paying in full seems best.
I'm glad. That will make life easier for me.
I might pay a bit more for the alimony.
Really? Are you sure?
Yes, of course.
Just don't regret it later.
Huh?
Don't worry, seeing you two happy makes me happy too. 2 weeks later, a grand wedding was held, and Sarah was thrilled with her exquisite wedding dress. Sitting in the spotlight, Sarah and Stephen looked blissfully happy, like the happiest people in the world. I sat in the audience, smirking at the couple. After the wedding, as I saw them off to their honeymoon, I thought, now, the counterattack begins. They think they can be happy? You're being naive. Sure enough, when Stephen returned from the honeymoon and went to work, he found a disciplinary notice on his desk. Shocked by the sudden action, he rushed to the CEO's office. But the CEO said he didn't know the reasons as it was the chairman's decision. Stephen insisted, but couldn't change the outcome. Dejected, he gathered his belongings and left the company. When he got home, he found a bill from the wedding venue. Opening it, he called me, his voice almost a scream. His voice sounded like a scream, almost. Oh, Stephen, what's up?
I've been fired. Out of nowhere.
That's tough.
I don't understand why I was let go.
Really? No idea why.
None at all. I haven't made any big mistakes, and now this disciplinary action. The chairman made the decision, and I can even meet him to find out why. The CEO just tells me to leave.
Well, that's unfortunate, isn't it?
It's not just unfortunate.
But, come on, saying that.
And now, there's this huge bill from the wedding venue you introduced.
That makes sense. It was a grand wedding. Sarah's wedding dress alone must have cost around $40,000. I thought it was quite a pricey one you picked.
That's why the bill is so enormous. And on top of being fired.
But the venue can't be helped. Being fired and the venue are unrelated.
Can we get the venue price reduced?
That's impossible. They already gave us a friend's discount. Can't ask for more.
But I don't have the money now.
You had the money for such an expensive wedding, right?
That was before I get fired. And now I'm even getting billed for the condo rent.
Well, of course.
Why? Shouldn't it be paid for?
It's a rental, Stephen.
Rental? I thought we bought this condo.
Didn't you know? It's a rental. Since we could rent the luxury apartment for a reasonable price, I passed it on to you. You can't rent the penthouse in a tower for that amount, you know. But I don't need it. It's fine for a family, but it's just me and my daughter.
I can't believe it's a rental.
You thought you owned it?
Yes, exactly.
That's unfortunate. But now there's nothing you can do about it. If it bothers you, just move out.
She's complaining. Why do we have to move out of the luxury condo when we just got it? I told her we have no money, but she doesn't care. Plus, we paid for the honeymoon with credit cards, and the bill is coming in 2 months. There's no way we can pay it.
Well, that's your problem, not mine. You were the ones who spent the money.
But this means misery, not happiness. Can you lend us some? Give back the alimony and child support I paid in full. That way, we can get by for now.
No way, I'll never see that money again if I lend it to you.
Oh man. Why was I fired?
Because you had an affair.
What? How do you know the reason? If it's true, what a terrible chairman. Isn't firing someone over an affair too much?
Well, the company doesn't tolerate such behavior.
Why do you know all this?
Simple, because I'm the chairman.
What? No way. I knew you started a business, but chairman. How come it's my company? Huh?
Realized it? When you were thinking of quitting, why do you think a completely different company offered you a position as a head, huh?
I thought it was because of my skills.
Come on, that's not it. I arranged for your headhunting.
What? But you said you were just an office worker.
I started that company. Once it was on track, I wanted to focus on family, so I made my cousin the CEO. In exchange, I became the chairman and told you I was an office worker. That way, your pride was intact, and I could take care of our daughter.
This is insane. I was just dancing in your palm.
Exactly.
But firing me is too harsh.
You're the one who betrayed, remember?
You said you wanted me to be happy.
Yes, I wanted you to be happy. Now the shock of hitting rock bottom will be greater, right?
That's cruel.
Happiness has its downside. But you chose that woman, so you'll be fine, right? Good luck. Stephen kept saying, this can't be real, but I was smirking triumphantly. He kept contacting me to let him return to work, but of course, I refused. After enduring such frustration, why would I offer a helping hand now? There's no way I would do that. Ultimately, unable to find a job and faced with the enormous wedding and honeymoon bills, plus the alimony he owed Sarah, Stephen had to take out large loans. Forced by Sarah's insistence to stay in the luxury condo, they eventually had to move to a rundown apartment. Sarah is constantly ripping into Stephen, saying, "This is such a scam," practically every day. Stephen finally found a job at a small factory as a temporary worker. Ridiculed by colleagues, his pride shattered. Even working himself to exhaustion, his salary is only about 1/10 of what he earned when he was a department head. When he asked Sarah to work too, she retorted, "Don't joke. This isn't what I signed up for." Eventually, overworked to the point of collapse and needing hospitalization, he couldn't afford it. Sarah, disgusted, divorced him after 6 months. Now he lives alone in that shabby apartment. I return to my job. I'm teaming up with the CEO while I serve as the chairman. Though the condo is smaller than before, the view with my daughter is still the best, proving once again that luxury condos are superior.